support that we had at that time. So I hope you can enjoy this format too, this online format. And before passing the floor to our speaker, I remind you that you can post questions in the chat that we will then address to our speaker. So please write your question in the chat, and then we collect them. And in the program, you can also find the email of our speakers, so you may contact them after the event. I will also inform you that this event will be recorded and posted online. So now we can move to the central part of our event, so to our speaker. So our first speaker is Mauro Cecconello. So we can see Mauro. Can you switch on your camera? Who is playing the role of Italian ambassador in design in Singapore for this event. So welcome, ambassador. Mauro was foreseen to come in Singapore in March, but we do hope to see him soon. Mauro is associate professor in design and architecture technology at Politecnico di Milano. He mainly focused his research activity on interaction design to enhance cultural heritage. He's the scientific coordinator of research projects concerning digital technology and interaction tools for product design. His latest research interests artificial intelligence and a virtual assistant for product design. And he's the president of the School of Design Joint Committee and head of design laboratories of Politecnico di Milano. The title of his presentation is Design and Culture, a Sustainable Approach in Italy through Cutting-Edge Technology. So please, Mauro, go ahead.
Thank you, Nicola. I hope you can see my screen. I guess so. So first of all, I want to thank you, to thank Nicola and the staff of the Italian Embassy at Singapore, and first of all, even ADI, Associazione per il Design Industriale, who make me the ambassador of the Italian design. Just a few words about Politecnico di Milano. Politecnico di Milano is a technical university, and we have 4 schools, 2 schools of engineering, 1 school of architecture and urban planning, and one school of design, that the one I belong to. We have even 12 departments that taking care about the applied research at Politecnico. Just to let you know, there is a sort of question thinking about why design for promotion and enhancement of culture. I think that there are many reasons, but I just try to summarize some of them. First of all, I think that design could be considered a knowledge of processes and methods connected to a sort of problem-solving approach. So we can think about the designer as a facilitator, a sort of connection between different know-how, so creativity and technology sides. I've always been attracted by technology and its use for supporting creativity and design, as well as cultural valorization and dissemination. So in my presentation, I try to give you a brief description of the activities of my group at the design department. So we are dealing with 3D modern and virtual reality, augmented reality, and interaction design in museum and exhibition. As ambassador, focus even on design archives and collection and location-based system and apps to promote this kind of culture. So starting with my presentation, I want to tell you that we did a great amount of projects dealing with virtual reality for edutainment. I'm thinking about all the projects we did, for example, for building virtual Rome or virtual Pompeii to let people understand how it was in the past, and people could walk inside the ancient towns. But even to verify through virtual reality in real time possible restoration activities or reconstruction. So sometimes we did some kind of project dealing with the building of scenarios that do not exist, or try to provide solution to verify restoration projects or some other stuff before I'm doing really. So it's a sort of virtual yard to verify all the possible solution. So we even had accurate acquisition of some kind of object with laser scanning. They were performed to create digital molds, to acquire friezes and print them for different purposes, to create replicas, and testing from process for other possible application. I'm thinking about all the projects that dealt with all the stuff that were, present in the museums, and people were not able to see them or to touch them, because it was sort of a difficulty handling with this kind of goods. So this could be a possibility that we investigate in the past. But we did also virtual reality and augmented reality for historical sites. In this case, you see some kind of images about the reconstruction of the garden, the historical garden in Villa Arconati. Villa Arconati was one of the Villa Arconati complex was one of the most important sites in northern Milan, and dates back to the 14th century. And so this was an occasion to investigate and see what could be the restoration project, or let people understand how the villa was in the past. So through the years, showing different levels of the reconstruction in time of the Baroque garden. That was one of the main characteristics of the sites. Other project dealt with the interaction design and human-computer interaction in the cultural field. And this kind of new technology transform languages and fruition to original ways to disseminate and let people be engaged, the visitor be engaged in this kind of visit experience. So embodied interaction promoted dialogue with application through the body and gesture. So we creating engaging and realistic learning experiences. But not only this, as well as the new ways to learn and discover the heritage of museums through unusual visiting experience using augmented reality, artifacts and maps in an engaging experience. So the goal was to create different ways of different experience to let people be engaged positively and in new ways with different ways of visiting some important places. So in this case, the project started from a course of the School of Design and ended up with a nice happening organized by the museum at night with visitor paying for the experience. So this could be a sort of let's try to understand how this kind of new things, new ways could be profitable and sustainable for museums to provide, to have more people, to broaden the audience and the people visiting. So just I slightly changed the approach because we deal with industrial design intended as a cultural heritage itself, as a witness of the industrial production that needs to be shared with a wider audience, conveying not only the intrinsic value of a product, but also the system of value in which that product was generated. So the first project I'm going to present, starting with the assignment to Politecnico di Milano of the digitization of some of the wooden models of a large collection of the modeler Giovanni Saki, that is a property of the Regione Lombardia and in custody at Triennale di Milano. These models are stored, like a lot of material in museums, and not exposed to the public because of the lack of space. And so the digitization was intended as a way to show them to a wider public. By the way, if you, I set a note on the screen, so if you want, you can visit the site of Lombardia Beni Culturali and see all the collection. Just a few words about Giovanni Saki, just to introduce the tale about the kind of period. Saki was not a designer. He was trainer as a foundry maker, and he managed to have his own shop for mechanical models until he first met Marcello Nizzoli, an important designer. And that moment marked the transition to a different approach. So no more model with precise measure for mechanical industry, but architects and designers that need to prototype came to his bottega to better understand the strengths and weakness of the design, but even to have some kind of concrete object to present to their committers. He was involved in all stages of the design process, and he was not a silent executor. He used to identify and correct the criticalities of the project. As well, he could understand and speak the same language of the designers. And it's important because you're even able to go online and see all the interviews with the most famous designer, Italian and Milanese designers, who speak about the all the collaboration with the Saki. It's very, very interesting. And for this reason, many professionals supported his candidacy for Compasso d'Oro. That is one of the most important prize for design in Italy, and he received it in 1998 for his career. So from the first step, at the beginning, it was just the acquisition with the lattice scanner of these wooden models, and then provide a sort of replica to expose and let people see, touch, go around with no hassle-free. And so from this step grew the idea to implement the project, collecting and digitizing also drawing, photos, and all kind of a material that related to every single product, looking at them at design offices or companies involved in the process of development and production. Of course, we started a pilot program, and so we dealt with some of them. You can see here just an example of some of the objects that we with different, you see the heterogeneous material that we were able to find. So different kind of technical drawings, small sketches, slides, prototypes, and so on. So the final aim of the project is not only the digitization and the cataloging themselves, but is the reconstruction of the process of development of famed design projects. This kind of project and all the material, in fact, they conserved a great knowledge in terms of creativity, technical ability, processes, communication, that are worth to be rediscovered and disseminated. So here you see some kind of images that we acquired during the process. In this case, you see some sketches of Gibigiano lamp that Achille Castiglioni made for Floss in 1980. As well, in this case, Tama lamp from Valenti from Isao Zoe, a famous designer in Milan. So this kind of approach was a useful opportunity, not only for researchers and scholars that are conducting studies about the subject, but even for future designers who can profit by a mind-on and hands-on approach toward the culture of design project. So in this case, you see a stool from Anna Castelli Ferrieri that was built in 1979 for Cartel. And during the project, we spent a lot of time. I'm thinking about all the time we spent at Museo Cartel, at Ozoe Design Studio, and Studio Museo Achille Castiglioni. And so doing that, we understood the real potentiality of a gold mine that was not exposed to the people. So we think that we could find the support through the continued evolution of digital technologies that paves the way for innovative projects in the cultural sphere, providing option for disseminating information and promoting knowledge acquisition and supporting widespread educational activity. So in the period, we were focusing on location-based service. So location-based services are services that are able to georeference on a map different point of interest and connecting information about it. So in this case, we decide to switch to a wider museum. So the city itself became an exposition site, and so people could, the user could import the chance to interact with the artifact and the feeling for them to be in a proper place and getting information on it. So looking for Achille Castiglioni was a bilingual location-based mobile application designed to valorize the archive of Studio Museo Achille Castiglioni outside the museum. So it was divided in different areas, so design, exhibition, and architecture. And it lets visitor through a point of interest in downtown Milan, in a walking distance from the studio, and documents, drawing, photos, and models were accessible through the mobile device and tell the story of selected project and temporary exhibition that shaped the history of Milanese and Italian design. So as you can see, the user could have a map and focus on some point of interest on the map and move freely around the town, because the application does not provide a specific route that the user might follow. So choosing one of the three thematic areas, the people were able to move around the city, providing and the application could provide people with contextual content while wandering the streets of the city. So it's a new way. In this case, you even have some speeches was a bilingual, so Italian and English, and you can listen to a speech telling the user about the specific point and dealing with new images and so on. So in this case, you see a brewery, the Birreria Splug and Bräu, designed in 1960 by Achille and Pier Giacomo Castiglioni in Milan. And so the importance of this kind of application is because in this case specifically, the user is able to see something that does not exist anymore. So it was very useful for it. So in this case, for example, you are able to appreciate the interior design that the Castiglioni brothers did in this project, and all the specific objects that they designed. So, for example, the lamps, for example, the umbrella stands or metal ashtray that you're able to find on the catalog of a famous design company. And this was, for example, an example of a global project, because there were the Castiglioni brothers as well as Max Huber, who took care about the graphics of the entire brewery, designed the signs, the inscriptions, glasses, and so on. I'm running because I know that Nicola is taking the time of my presentation. So I'm moving to another project fastly. This is another approach because in this case I'm going to speak about play design. There is a sort of testing of location-based serious mobile games for promoting and spreading the culture of design, offering entertainment as well an informal means of learning, as I said, by transforming Milano into a playground. So in this case, we can say that the aim is twofold: provide citizens and tourists with information about design as an icon of the Made in Italy, and acquaint the young public, because it was even oriented not just only to tourists and cities, but even for students who could be interested in design discipline, to be, involved in a nice learning experience walking in town. So we have designed two games. First one is a solo experience. We can call it sort of location-based treasure hunt. That's the title, Design Hunt. And so the user will play the role of detective designers who follow the trace left by the famous ZZ Monkey. Bruno Munari was an award-winning product because the ZZ Monkey won the Compasso d'Oro in 1954. And so just follow these traces along Milan, and the user was guided by the smartphone and some cards, so the physical and the digital put together to provide a new experience, as the user needs to provide the correct answer to questions, walking the streets of Milan to discover, I'm thinking about institutions, showrooms, public sites and locations that feature the history of Milanese design. So a sequence of hints and part of a storyline are prompted, and only after visiting the right place and placing the right answer, the system prompts the next place to be visited. Design Learn propose a different approach, as it is a role-playing game involving 4 teams, one for each of the degree courses offered by Politecnico di Milano, and you see them on the screen. And each team must collect points and skills by answering questions correctly and locating reward sites in order to earn the highest score and beat the other teams. In this game, the interaction with the mobile device is supported by analogical tools, a map showing the points of interest, and a deck of cards with hints, because all this kind of interaction that is not just only digital was aimed at fostering richer interaction among players and between the players and the devices in, let's say, in a continuous dialogue between the digital and the physical, because sometimes just only the digital let the users feel alone, and this kind of dealing with the technology sometimes need to be broken. So there is obviously in this game there is always a close relationship between the location of the point of interest that you see on the map here and the quiz topics, for example, showrooms, hotels, museums, graphics, indoor and outdoor spaces to be visited represent the perfect setting to encourage players to recognize and appreciate examples of modern and contemporary design in the city of Milan. So I just want to conclude. I don't have the time, so I don't know if I'm long or short in the presentation, but I was to conclude with, I propose this citation of Martin de Vlet. She's a pioneer of digital archiving and director of the Canadian Center for Architecture, pointing out that finding the good ideas in heritage could be a creative and an intellectual process for researcher, able to give meaning to the material they found. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mauro, for this very nice presentation with this nice citation at the end. I remind that if somebody some specific question can put in the chat, and then at the end we have a short Q&A question, and so we can collect some questions to all the speakers. And so next speaker is Professor Laura Miotto, and I think Laura represents a perfect bridge between Italy and Singapore, because she came from Politecnico di Milano as well in Italy, and now she is associate professor at the School of Art Design and Media of Nanyang Technical University here in Singapore, and co-director of the Master Media of the Master in Museum Studies and Curatorial Practices. With 20 years experience in the design field, both as creative director and an architectural designer, Laura has worked on permanent and temporary exhibition, focusing on heritage interpretation and sensorial design strategies in the context of museum. Sorry. Among her projects, the Living Galleries at National Museum of Singapore and the Lee Kong Chiang Natural History Museum to explore local culture and environments in a phase of transformation. And very nice to know that in 2010, she received the President Design Award in Singapore for the exhibition Quest for Immortality, the World of Ancient Egypt. Title of her presentation is Designing Cultural Exhibition in Singapore with a Digital Technology. So, Laura, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
There you go. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola, and thank you, Mauro, for your talk. It was really, really inspiring to see and to be connected again to the school where I come from. I am trying to share my slides. If you give me a second. Can you see my slides? Am I enabled to share?
No, for the moment.
Okay. Am I able to share on here? Am I disabled by any means?
I cannot see any.
Because I can see the sharing, but I can't quite. All right. I'm not so sure what is the problem. Let me see.
To do as before we start the meeting all was working.
Yeah. Should I try to reconnect quickly? Maybe.
Okay. Just wait 1 minute. as usual, always working perfectly during the test.
When we are online on the air, it's not working. Sometimes it happens. Laura is you're muted. Okay.
Now you see, now we just need to hear you, Laura. Just unmute your microphone. Thank you so much, Laura. Go ahead. Laura, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, there's a lot of multitasking. Okay, can you hear me right now? All right, sorry for the dispersive moment. But thank you so much to the Embassy of Italy for inviting me here. It's really exciting to be talking to all of you during the Italian Design Day, and also that you decided to explore the theme of innovation and design in the cultural heritage. I think it is a field in which Italy give an excellent contribution, like you said, Nicola, and I think really Italy is frontline, not only on architectural conservation and so on, and in museum studies, but in many ways have been also frontline in the way design has been innovative in this field. I say also this because as a designer, I must say this is something that we study in our School of Architecture and Design. I myself, I'm former at the Politecnico, and I came just here to Singapore in the year 2000. But it's only when we start to practice abroad and we compare ourselves that we realize how much our design culture and the idea of valuing history and art is really embedded in the way we think and the way our design schools have formed us, because maybe other designers may have quite different formation and approach. So also I would say that Italy has been a very important place for exhibition designers in the last century. I'm thinking of people like Carlo Scarpa, Franco Albini, Lina Bobardi, an architect that I researched in the 90s. And here you can see a book that I co-authored with Savina Nicolini, Lina Bobardi Apprezza l'Accadimento. It was the first book on monograph on her architecture. And now she is acclaimed as one of the most seminal museum designers in the post-war architectural modernism, and in many ways a very revolutionary one. We can see here her Sao Paulo Museum of Art. Lina Bobardi practiced in Brazil. This is a project of 1968. I just want to say this as a tribute because I think these are important figures that have influenced me immensely when I started to myself work in this field. So I am in Singapore for almost 20 years now, and my professional life was almost entirely dedicated to design exhibitions for museums, cultural centers, also scientific institutions. And in a way, I have assisted locally also at the growth of this field. There has been many museums that have been the Asian Civilizations Museum, the National Gallery of Singapore. Many museums also have been, many historical museums also have been remodernized, like the National Museum in Singapore. And some of them have been really important places for me where I could contribute also. Together also with the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum, of which you see some images over here. Currently, I mean, in 2015, I joined the School of Art, Design and Media at the Nanyang Technological University. And that was because for the first time in Southeast Asia, a master program in museum studies and curatorial practices was in the making. And so today I am there and I co-direct this program. It is really meant to prepare professionals that will have to work in this highly complex and diverse museum landscape of today, which is a very interdisciplinary one, and extremely technological and complex. And definitely, I would say this is just the evidence that this sector have been evolving tremendously here in Singapore specifically. So what I would like to do today, because also we don't have a lot of time, is to just focus on 3 of my projects that perhaps will allow me to reflect upon some transformations that I have been seeing in this, working in this field here in Singapore, and also think a little about digital technologies in museum storytelling and dealing with sustainability as well, since I think the Italian Design Day is also in some way dedicated to thinking of sustainability. So I will start, the first project brings me back to 2004, when actually I was starting to work on this gallery, the food gallery at the National Museum of Singapore. And at that time, the museum was under a revamp. And this is an exhibition that used gastronomy as a thematic lens to portray the social history of post-war Singapore and examine how the street food sold by the hawkers reflect ethnic diversity and cultural heritage, and also innovation. So the development of the gallery took 2 years and was a result of a collaboration between curator, designers, domain expert, and we all look at museological solutions to show food as a marker of culture and social identity. And here, perhaps you can have a glance of some of the key dishes that were featured. But one of the things that museum can't do when we're speaking, for instance, about food is to show the actual food. And food is such a sensory experience. And so as a designer, I was really attracted by the sensual and social qualities of the eating experience. And so I worked with let me just go back. I think I hope I can. Can you hear the sound? So you can hear the sound also. Yes. There was in the gallery a soundscape. You can see some images here. And so it is an intermix of moving images, collections, audio visuals, a lot of what we considered back then quite advanced digital technologies, as well as also the idea of engaging with touch and with aromas and smell. So the idea that also museums should be not considered always such a visuocentric kind of world, because in museums we can touch, we can do a lot of things. The museum etiquette doesn't allow the visitors to do a lot of experiences. And so at that time, I was really thinking a lot of engaging with the senses. So during the research also, we were looking at food and discovering that color and smell matters more than taste in food appreciation. These are the scientists that say that. And so researching also on local culture here, we discover very interesting things like a blue cake that is something that often is not even used in food. So you can see here images of the very first concept of this gallery, which was a kind of act of deconstruction, putting all the elements of the sensoria, mixing visual and smell and collections together. eventually the gallery evolved to a different, in the completion stage, to a very different kind of look and feel. But I think we retain this idea of speaking about food, looking at the color qualities, sensory qualities. It was like a big abacus of all the ingredients used in the cuisine in Singapore. And yeah, it was flanking 3 parts of the galleries, backlit. There were more than 330 jars in this gallery. For some of them, we wanted to offer the experience of smell the food, and so we decided to work on the scents of coconut, kaffir lime, wolfberry, cardamom. These are very, very important spices in food in Singapore, and this was a very interesting aspect that I would like to point out of my experience, for instance, in here of working for a museum in a design field, how interdisciplinary this collaboration was, because we started to work with flavorists that would distill a synthetic smell of these elements. So scents are designed as well, and actually when we look into scents, it's like they are designed as if they are accords. They are something more similar probably to a musical composition, and the flavorist would act, making them more structured or more complex. They are like molecules that resonate in the air. Basically, they have a top, they have a middle, and the base note. So this was something very, very interesting that I discovered, sort of a kind of invisible architecture that the sensorial has. And this was this device, an olfactory device that then I designed for the museum. It was one of the key principles, of course, was to limit the odor dispersal in the museum, because museums are very specific environments that can't really have any kind of contamination. Also, it was this device was basically embedded inside the jars of the display, and also there were some ergonomic considerations as to have it available for different type of visitors, children as well as people in wheelchairs and so on. Yeah, here you can see a few other images. The gallery opened in 2006, and it really became, I think, the fact that there was something to smell in there, it became a highlight. It became something that people will remember about it. And also, I think the most important recognition, I think, for this project was later on in 2008, when a pilot project was started by the ministry, at the time the Ministry of Information, Education and the Arts, to make museums more accessible to visitors that will have visual handicaps and make it more inclusive. And so this was a collaboration that then we did with the Singapore Association for the Visually Handicapped, in which we created tactile maps and a lot of experiences that would include this kind of people. So I think the device, this smell device, by the way, is still in use today in the History Gallery. They use it also in the Farquhar Gallery. So it is a quite enduring experimentation that I could initiate on this aspect of olfactory communication in the museum context. And what is, I think, very intriguing about this is the fact that out of all senses, olfaction is the only senses that can really trigger our forgotten memories. And so it has a very, very special relationship with memory, which is something very important in museums. In this case, I think it was a very powerful tool that allowed me to connect tangible and intangible heritage, in this case, the intangible heritage of food. The second project I would like to share, it's called the Post-Human City, Climates, Habitat, and Environments. And actually, it's a much more recent project. It opened last year at the NTU Contemporary Art Center. It is a kind of collective exhibition. Sorry. It is a kind of, it features multiple artists, architects, designers, and it really is a sort of dialogue that bridges art, design, and architecture in connection to the emergencies we have today toward the environment. The project was co-curated with Ute Metabauer, and also I took care of the design of the exhibition. You can see some images here. So it focuses, of course, on the urban aspect of our life, because currently more than half of the world's human population lives in urban areas. And so urban growth has posed a lot of challenges and material demands that have caused quite a lot of damaging problems to our planet and to the environment. So all the artists somehow question very strongly how to deal with these issues, how to examine the urban fabric in its condition as a habitat for a diversity of life forms, as a place where we should take care of our resources, make sure they can be regenerated. I want just to quickly show you some of the artists that were present in this show. You can see here the work. Yes?
Speed up a little bit.
Yes.
Running out of time. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So, yeah, I will just scroll through these, some of the images. I think it would be remarkable to just say something about this work by Alicia Lazzaroni and Antonio Bernacchi, which also are called Animali Domestici, because they were two architects and designers that lived quite a long time also in Singapore, and in Bangkok. They did this amazing work of mapping the city of Bangkok from the point of view of pythons. And so they speak a lot about the coexistence with other species in our urban environment. We have here a burial suit by Jairim, a designer and technologist that work with very sophisticated biological material to create, well, in that case, she advocates post-mortem responsibilities toward the natural world. We have Nicolas Mangan, a film that also was featured in this exhibition. And finally, the works of Ines Dujac, who remind us very much of the upcoming threats of pandemics. And true enough, in fact, when this exhibition opened, it was also coincided with the beginning of COVID. Just to say something on the show, you can see how the show is in this very immersive, strong green environment. And so this is a chroma key or green screen kind of technique, which I decided to use for the exhibition design, and that just makes the artworks live in this state of ubiquity that perhaps is common to all of us right now when we are in contact with digital technologies, and it's common to us now since we are in this webinar. So the last one, I would like just to signal a project that has been just launched. It's called the Literary Pioneer Exhibition. It is an exhibition that was an online exhibition, actually, that was commissioned by the Singapore Writers Festival. And I think you will be able to visit. So I just only want to say a few very key things that were on our thinking process, because I think what worries me about also embarking on this technology, as much as I love to deal with them, is the fact that they have been reducing very much our experiences to a screen. And so when we thought of having an exhibition, in this case online, but not being able to retain a lot of space qualities or embodied experiences, we have tried to link together space and sound and text in very different ways to feature the work of these three Tamil writers that pioneer literature in Singapore. It was a very inspiring project. It brought us back also to the 60s and 70s and to the visual communication of that time. You can see it from the images, but I think probably you will be able to visit this yourself. And with that, I would like to conclude and thank you. Just saying that I hope, even though it's a short time, I managed to trace at least three things that I think are very importantly happening. The first is the idea of multisensory storytelling, which is happening a lot in museums in Singapore right now. Also the idea of a non-human-centric sort of design, something that the exhibition Posthuman have advocated in terms of looking at sustainability. And finally, the idea of digital technologies in the new normal and how to not reduce our life into a single screen. And then maybe this is something that we can have as a discussion later. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Laura. Your advice are welcome for everybody. But the time is also important dimension, and we have to take care. And so I would like to introduce the third speaker, who is Emmanuel Koch, that I have to thank again for the wonderful poster he provided for this event. And Emmanuel is assistant professor in both architecture and sustainable design and in design and artificial intelligence architecture in Singapore, at the Singapore University of Technology and Design. He teaches and conducts research on creative use of deep learning for architectural and urban design, as well. He heads the Artificial Architecture Research Laboratory at SUTD. Prior joining SUTD, he was based at École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, EPFL, in Switzerland, and doing transdisciplinary research work between School of Computer Science and the Institute of Architecture. Since graduating from Architectural Association in London, he has taught in many countries from UK, China, Russia, London, and many others. And Emmanuel has also worked as an architect in different international studios, like Zaha Hadid Architecture in London. And I'm happy about this because Zaha Hadid has done so many amazing projects also in Italy, starting from the Maxi in Rome and many other in Milan. So the title of his presentation is Artificial Intelligence, Generative Design for Sustainability. So it's your time, Emmanuel. Try to keep time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicola, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen now. Just give me a second. Right. Can you see the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, right. That's good. So, so thanks the Embassy of Italy for this, for inviting me here. So to relate to the title of this event, which is the Innovative and Sustainable Tools in Design for Cultural Heritage, I've titled my talk based on the idea, the notions of AI and generative design for sustainability. And for those who have read the online synopsis, when you registered for the event grid, you would have noticed that the very notion of sustainability is approached in a slightly different way for this talk, at least, mainly focusing on the AI's transformative and creative capacity, and underpinned by this coupling of the notion of sustainability and creativity. So before I continue further, I think I should take a few, half a minute or something to introduce SUTD, since I'm in fact representing the university. So it is a young university founded 2009. And rather than the standard departments, it adopts a interdisciplinary structure with 4 design pillars in built environment, products, systems, services, and most recently with the addition of the design AI program. At the same time, we have 2 other clusters, the humanities, arts, and social sciences, that provide this additional perspective beyond the technical in understanding the human behaviors and societal needs. And of course, the science and math technology cluster provide the foundational digital competency for the students. So let's begin with the subject of sustainability. We all know that in 2015, the UN adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. In 2019 interview titled The Role of Technology, Creativity, and Cities in Our Way to Approach SDGs, Mary Mandashahi, the former senior economist of the UN, said that creativity is predicted to become the most critical resource, a major player in emerging knowledge economies. At the same time, in 2019, Hans de Ove, the special advisor to the Director General of UNESCO, in his paper, The Relationship Between Sustainability and Creativity, wrote that it is the ultimate renewable resource. Creativity is at the heart of sustainability, a special kind of renewable resource. And he then concluded in his paper that that design is a key dimension of creativity and also a major component of culture. Essentially, proposing this idea of extending sustainability to that of creativity. So I will now show 3 different scales of creative projects and digital design tools, all of them leveraging deep neural networks for their capacity to, 1, predict, generate, and augment. I've included here in small print the corresponding published papers for those who are interested, could check them out. But starting with the first one, the predictive urbanism. Quite recently, in 2018, a team from the ETH Zurich, led by Professor Gerhard Schmidt, proposed this idea of the citizen design science as a strategy for crowd-creative urban design, which is essentially a combination of design science and citizen science. And for the projects I'm talking about, in fact, take cues from such paradigm of citizen science, citizen creativity, with the first section, the predictive urbanism. So the first project looked at the Ouagadougou, in this case, relating to the current situation where in this case, according to the World Economic Forum, the WHO, that 40 of the 50 countries with the highest road traffic depths are in fact all African. Compared to Europe, Africa actually has 10 times fewer cars and yet 3 times higher road traffic depths. So the project in this case is an alternative to Google Map, that it doesn't just show the shortest path between point A and point B. It also shows the safest route to take, using deep neural network, in this case, to segment any given satellite imagery into safe or unsafe pixels. Here, in this case, safety is measured by the inferred distribution of these green and red pixels, which refers to paved road and dirt road. So, in fact, it generates the 3 top ranking itineraries for one to take to ensure safety. The other project, which mainly looked at another urban object, photovoltaics, asking the question, how might one infer the sentiments of a city towards issues such as environmental sustainability and renewable energy. So in this project, basically, the strategy is to count the solar panel coverage of each city using a deep neural networks, in this case, a discriminative model to do classification. So in this app, the idea is so you could see, this is the map of Switzerland, basically. So the darker shade of red and the higher means the higher percentages of buildings with solar panels. So therefore, basically trying to rank all the different cantons in Switzerland. In this case, it's in Lausanne, in the French-speaking Vaud. The yellow color footprints represent buildings with solar panels. So the neural networks basically is trying to say how many buildings actually had solar panels installed on their roof, which is visible from satellite imagery. Of course, those in black represent those without panels, solar panels. The third project, roofs, is about collaboratively detecting or predicting roofs of the Colombian indigenous houses that are distributed among the tropical forests of La Sierra Nevada. The roof is actually very characteristic in this particular settlement, the rural settlement, where it serves as a way to train our AI more easily also. So here's a kind of the web app also to illustrate the process of crowdsourcing and also crowd verifying the location of the settlements. We see here that some rudimentary guidelines are given to search for these potential settlement locations. For example, starting with searching near or along the river, and also this additional interface where people could verify and confirm to even see the activation of the neurons of the AI model, and therefore trying to kind of open up that black box for the citizen, the crowd who are in fact sourcing the data sets. And the last one under predictive urbanism is this seemingly just not very useful but fun project where instead of typing a name, you make a sketch. And the interface returns the most similar shaped Swiss lakes. There are in fact about more than 3,000 lakes in Switzerland. But on a more serious note, for scientific purposes, one could actually infer the nature of the local weather. One could also understand the biological diversity of the lake based on for instance, the color, or even the simple length to width ratio and the shoreline profile. So some samples of the data set and also some pre-processing of the data set. So move on quite quickly now to generative architecture, the second section of the series of projects that I want to show. Mainly focuses on the AI generating novel design variation, therefore sustaining the cognitive and also extending the cognitive capacity of the human in generating new design. So the use of machine learning to statistically and probabilistically synthesize 3D spatial forms. I thought this quote is quite interesting by mathematician Richard Henning. Back in 1980, where he talked about this seemingly blind spot of the human, that there are thoughts that are not that cannot be thought, right? Unthinkable thoughts, basically. And this is really the motivation to use artificial intelligence, in this case, artificial creativity, to generate design that might have been missed out in that huge design space. So just for sake of illustration, in the tools to use to generate interior configuration, so here we have this very familiar Barcelona pavilion from 1928 by Ms. Van der Roon. And using that, one could actually generate from a statistical approach, not based on shape rules or shape grammar whatsoever, to generate similar ones that retain the features that one might desire. Similarly, in this case, one could also do arithmetics of combinations of forms. So in this case, the Ricardo Bowesfield Lama Roja of 1973, just picking two of the stair cores, one could actually combine them, in this case, different kernel size, to generate multiscalar forms. Similarly, instead of just addition, one could also do subtraction in the design, that abstract design space. Here, the Le Corbusier's Maison Domino of 1914. Using more recent recent building design as the AI training set here, for instance, generated samples of plausible architecture operations such as house extension, roof replacement, and even attic addition. The before and after the project is really inspired by the idea that one could, today in AI, we could say oldify a person's face or kind of youngify a person's face. So is there something that we could approach it from a design perspective where the machine could search for these potential before and after architectural forms or impressions? On a more three-dimensional approach, using similar like artificial searching of possible architecturally workable residential block. So in this case, the deep model learned more than 3,000 of voxels of, well, actually HDBs in Singapore, and it could then generate likely workable massing. On the right, you actually see the AI model, the way it see the form in a probabilistic way, where different colored voxels represent the different probability activation of the network. So at the same time, one could then start to combine objects of different scale, buildings to chairs, and it may seem kind of strange, but it does have the capacity to do it. And a recent art submission that should be exhibited online for the NeurIPS, the conference in late December. So this is actually 3D printed, but it's generated from the similar generative adversarial network, the one that you saw just now. A project currently being developed with my master student, Xiang Wei, to develop an interface where AI model and human citizen could somehow interact to generate democratically derived makerspace museum. It is kind of a prototype of sort of part of the URA master plan for the Changi Business Park of Singapore. Just a quick overview of the cyber physical museum might look like or reconfigured in kind of a crowdsourced way, but in incorporating robotics as well. So more quickly, this is the last section of the talk where I focus on the AI for museum experience. So this first project, which is face-to-face, used facial and emotional recognition AI models. In this case, the Microsoft Azure Face API, to easily recognize or measure the emotions of a viewer when looking at a particular painting. So the hypothesis is really, what if paintings could see the emotions of the museum visitors? And what if paintings could have emotions too, like humans? So it's kind of this idea of humanizing the artifact. A quick video. This was done at EPFL, which was 1.5 years ago, if I move back to Singapore. So it happens that back then the exhibition, this is at the Musée d'Élysée, the Leopolding exhibition, where, so in this case, you could see that every painting could be given a kind of an emotional score of sadness, happiness, content. So it becomes a way to somehow esteem the artworks computationally and quantitatively. And in the more practical side of things might be, for instance, if you have just 4 minutes and you want to look at all the sad paintings in the collection, you could take that particular generated itinerary to kind of move through that space. This project is probably much more irreverent in that sense that it is looking at the algorithm, the deepfake, right, which some of you might be familiar. What if deepfake, an AI face swapping algorithm, is used to personalize one's museum experience? And is deepfake even culturally acceptable when contextualized for a museum? So in this case, put together by my student in FFL. So the idea is that you have this, not just a gallery, but also a kind of a mind gallery and our gallery, where the artifacts, in this case with many portraits, could be kind of where you could embed your faces. It's very irreverent, but nonetheless kind of experiment. And therefore you create yours kind of a virtual version of the same exhibition. Yeah. Yeah, so you have a look. Yeah, one of my students also could see that the swapping is kind of successful. Yeah, but oh yes, this last project. Yeah, this last project for the last section. We know we're running out of time. Is the idea of Instagrammable art. So as much as we could score the emotion capacity or propensity of artworks, could we also score its ability to be Instagrammable? So then the question is, what if the desirability of an artwork is dependent on its Instagrammability, and therefore leads to the second question, which is what really constitute an Instagrammable score? So of course, in this case, the project looked at the number of likes, and also in this case, using transfer learning to kind of guide what kind of score it could give you the result. Of course, I'm not saying that this is in any way reliable or accurate, but a prototype nonetheless. So thanks for the attention.
Thanks a lot, Emmanuel. I wonder when I can try your probabilistic chair. Would be nice. It will be safer or sustain me, my body. Okay, thanks a lot. I think, okay, we are still a very short time for a few questions. If maybe one question for each speaker, if each speaker promises to have the answer maybe in a couple of minutes. So I leave the floor to Gaia. So Gaia, you have some question for this other speaker?
Yes, thanks, Nicola, for giving the floor. And well, first of all, thanks to Mauro, Laura, and Emmanuel for their very stimulating and interesting speeches. So I just encourage all the attendees to write down the question on the chat box if they want to deepen some aspects or they want to have more information. So just to have a nice breaking question, I would like to ask to Laura, if I can. Laura, do you think that with the increased diffusion of digital and virtual technology, museum could disappear in the future?
Well, nobody here has the famous crystal ball, but I was very actually interested to see also how Emmanuel, and also I think Mauro, you mentioned at the end this quote from somebody at the Center of Contemporary Architecture in Montreal,